Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Firebase Semi-Live. It's a new day. I am wearing a new shirt. And when last we left off, we had added a couple other features to our cloud functions to report when it was the beginning of a new billing cycle. I'm going to add in a few other capabilities to kind of detect some things that might look a little strange. And then we'll move on from there. So let's get coding. All right, so let me think. The next thing I probably want to do is I'm going to create a function called, let's call it calculate projected costs. And here I'm going to pass in my pub sub data, which is of type pub sub data, which is that interface we had earlier. And basically what I want to do is have this return how much we think you're going to spend by the end of the current billing cycle. And how do you do that? Well, let's see. So estimated cost equals current cost divided by percent through cycle, right? So if we're 1/10 of our way through our cycle, we divide our current costs by 1/10 or multiply by 10, and that's how we get our estimated costs. And our percent through the cycle is usually equal to, the way I usually calculate this is like basically now minus beginning divided by end minus beginning. And that's a pretty good way of calculating sort of what percentage through the current billing cycle we are. So, well, I guess here, we'll probably calculate this first, and then we can calculate our estimated costs. So we have our billing cycle start, and that equals, actually, let me think. We're going to create a new date from our pub sub data, call it cost interval start. And yeah, I'm realizing if I'd made pub sub data like a class instead of just an interface, I probably could then, force it to go ahead and calculate a date object instead of having to sort of create one every time through the cost interval start string, something I will leave as an exercise for the future for the reader. And so let's see. So that's the start of the billing cycle. And today equals, well, that'll just be a new date object, which by default is set to today. And then here's the thing that's going to be a little tricky. I need to figure out the last millisecond of the cycle, of the billing cycle. And I don't know if there's a really easy way of doing this. Here's what I came up with. Go ahead and let me know if you came up with something else. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new day, a new date from today, get full year, today, get month, +1, and then day 1. So what this is basically going to do is this is going to create a date beginning on the first day of the next month. And I'm pretty sure I looked into this, and it turns out even if I say, like the 13th month of 2020, that will actually calculate January of 2021. It's smart enough to handle that. And so I have the first day of the next month. I can call get time on it to get, the time value in milliseconds, and then I just subtract 1. And so this is basically going to be the end of the current month, the very last millisecond of the current month. And so then I can say percent there equals, and I'll just plug in this formula. So just to make it easier, I'm just going to go and call get time on all of these. New date, get time. All right. So now I have basically milliseconds on all this. Oops, here. Const today in mils equals today dot get time. There you go. All right, there we go. And so now I can say percent there is basically today in mils minus billing cycle start divided by last millisecond of cycle minus billing cycle start. And that is the percentage of the way that we are through our current billing period. And then projected costs is going to be the current cost, which, as you recall, is pub sub data dot cost amount divided by percent there. And you know what? Let's just do a little logging here to make sure this all looks right. You are through the current cycle. I think you're going to spend projected costs. And then we can return projected costs. So then what we can do is maybe, let's say up here, yes, we've got our pub/sub object. Actually don't really care whether we have our previous billing info or not. So what I can do is say, const projected costs equals calculate projected costs. And here I have to pass in my pub/sub data. And then I can just add that onto our message string. So message string plus equals, you are looking to spend about projected costs by the end of the quarter, or sorry, by the end of the month. So there we go. We're adding that on to our message string, which right now we haven't flipped our send message bit. I could certainly do something like, in fact, you know what? Maybe let's do this. Up here, I'm going to say const projected costs to freak out about equals $10. So here I'm setting a constant saying, if my projected costs are over this, maybe sound more worried. So here's what I'll do. If projected costs are greater than the projected cost to freak out about, then I'm going to set send message to true no matter what. And my message string will look more worried. I'm going to say, yikes. Right, and obviously I could add in more logic here, depending on exactly how much I want to freak out about these costs. But otherwise, I won't change the send message bit. This will only be sent if I'm already sending a message due to other things, like, our billing costs have gone up. And actually, I think that's good. It's looking like what we want to see. So let me save this and let me try running this. See what I've messed up in my function. All right, 0 errors so far. I'm going to go ahead and actually, this is probably going to cause all sorts of weird issues. So I'm recording this right now on November 9th, and this does not look right. I am not 96% of the way through the current month. So why does this look weird? I think the problem is that I'm actually, as you recall, within my calculated projected cost function, I'm actually looking at my billing cycle start, the beginning of the month, from my pub/sub data. I'm grabbing this information from my pub/sub data. And so probably I need to fix this to more accurately represent the month that I am currently in. So I am not March of 2019. I am in November of 2020. If I send that, I now get a much more accurate, all right, I'm about 30% through the current cycle, and that looks like a more accurate amount that I will probably be spending. And sure enough, let's see. And there's my message being sent to my Slack channel. All right, let's make this look a little nicer. Here, let me go into my code. And put a little $sign before this. And I think I can set this to fixed to make it look a little more like US currency. Try this one more time. I'm now going to say that I'm spending 3 cents. And it looks like I'm going to spend about 10 cents by the end of the month. Okay, that looks a little better. And one could argue that maybe I should be calculating our current month by also using a date object instead of relying what's in cost interval start. That would certainly help, I suppose, in this situation where I'm just sort of making random curl calls to my function. I think in practice, the dates are going to be pretty accurate. I'm not super concerned here. Alrighty, let's move on. I'll add on one more function that you might want to calculate, just to kind of, see if things look weird. I'm going to create one more function around sort of calculating what our current rate of spending is based on sort of what we spent the last time we sent a message, because that could be another thing we might want to, send a more urgent looking message about, rather than sort of waiting for our projected costs to go up. If it sort of the dates work out right, we could just say, hey, over the last 24 hours, looks like you're spending a whole lot more than you have in the past. And we could maybe send out a a scarier looking message that way. So let's do that as well. You know, these are all kind of optional functions. I'm just thinking of things that you as a developer might care about. Feel free to write your own, right? Like if you have particular things based on sort of your billing that you are concerned about, you know, you could keep track of how much you spent at this time last month and, you know, start comparing your costs now to your costs in the previous month and, you know, see what the delta is there. Like those sorts of things you could totally do as well. I'm just coming up with a couple simple examples. You know, these are clearly not the only functions you could write. You do what makes sense for you. So let me make one more function called, let's call it calculate dollars per hour. And here I'll pass in my pub sub data. Whoa. Of type pub sub data. And let's say previous billing info, which is of type any, although did I say, oh yeah, I said it was document data. Maybe that will be a little more type safe. And so basically what I want to do here, the math I'm basically going to look at is like, how much have we spent since last sort of, you know, recorded time? How much time has passed since last recorded time? And then basically amount spent per time equals, you know, spend per hour, spend per, I guess it'll be seconds or something. So let's figure that out. This may make a little more sense when I put it all out here for you. So, all right, so our last reported cost will be equal to our previous billing info, last reported cost field. Our spent so far amount is equal to our pub sub data dot cost amount. And, whoops, sorry, let's make this spent so far. And then let's say our delta spent equals, let me spell delta right. So that equals spent so far minus our last reported cost. All right, so we know how much we spent. How much time has passed? Well, let's see. Last reported cost time equals our, let's see, previous billing info dot last reported time. Oh wait, you know what? I haven't recorded this yet. I've recorded, you can see up here, I've recorded the last reported like start time of our billing cycle, but I actually haven't recorded, you know, like the current time. Luckily, that's pretty easy to do. So let's do that. So in addition to recording last reported cost, last reported billing start, I will also add last reported cost time. And that should actually just be a new date, right? That will be sort of the time that I received or the time that I stored this message. And so now what I can do is, yeah, we'll get our last reported cost time. And we'll get today as our new date. And then what we can do is get our delta time. This will be today, get time, minus last reported cost time. And because this is going to be stored as a timestamp, I can call, I believe I can just, actually, sorry, I need to take this and convert this to date. Man, dates are just weird. They always are. All right, and now I can call get time on it. And this will get me my delta time in milliseconds, I believe. So if I divide this by 1,000, I now have my delta time in seconds. And I suppose if I want my delta time in hours, well, that's going to be my delta time in seconds divided by 3,600. And so finally, I can say that my dollars per hour equals delta spent divided by our delta time in hours. And, you know, I'll console log this. You've spent delta spent in the last delta time in hours for about dollars per hour. Yeah, we'll make these two fixed. You know what, let's just do that for all of them, just so that our debug code looks a little nicer. And then let's also just return dollars per hour. And so then, you know, up here we can kind of do something similar. And, you know, there's probably even, I'm sure there's a nicer way we could refactor this function because it's already starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger, where, you know, I could pass in a message string to append and, you know, a flagged return and that sort of thing. But you know what? I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to create my const, let's say dollars per hour to freak out about. And, you know, in my case, that's probably going to be, if I'm spending more than $1 per hour, something's real wrong here. And we can kind of do the same thing. Although in this case, because I'm actually dependent on this previous billing info up here, I'm going to have to move this up into this clause of if billing info doc exists, because I need to pass in my pub sub data and my previous billing info. And then, you know, if spend rate is greater than dollars per hour to freak out about, well, then send message equals true. Message string plus equals, oh no, you are spending about spend rate to fixed per hour. Otherwise, well, let's just add that on anyway, but without the drama. So I think this all looks okay. Let me make sure that we're not encountering any errors. That looks good. So let's go ahead and call this one more time. This is probably going to run, is this going to cause an error? Because right now, yeah, a little error because the very first time, yeah, I'm going to have to add my last reported cost time. What did I call the field? Last reported cost time. Or I could just clear out all my data and start over. Basically, the reason I'm running into an error, sorry, I'm just assuming you're following what's going on here, is my function is looking for, within my calculate dollars per hour function, it's looking for this last reported cost time field, which it's expecting as a timestamp, and that doesn't exist because basically, you know, my document database is out of sync. And really, the right thing to do would actually be code defensively and make sure I don't run into errors and gracefully handle when this sort of thing happens. But you know what? It's a video. It's getting kind of long already. Let me just clear out my data. Woohoo! All right. So I'm going to go ahead and, you know, basically, hey, it's a congratulations, beginning of a new billing cycle. So we have our billing cost and our cost time. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, well, now we're spending 5 cents. And well, actually, because I called that so quickly on the heels of my last one, it looks like I'm kind of doing the right thing here. Basically, my function is now freaking out because it's like, boy, you've suddenly started spending an awful lot in between now and the last time you recorded this thing, which was just a few seconds ago. So it looks like this function is actually working okay, except that I need to, let's add back in that other dollar sign. There you go. I'm going to call this one more time. Oh, right. It's not sending any message because my cost amount hasn't gone up. So let me go up to spending 6 cents. And it looks like we're spending about 67 cents an hour. We're probably going to spend about 20 cents by the end of the month. Why did it choose not to send a message, though? I feel like it should have decided to send a message. Oh, because I need to make sure this is greater than or equal to my billing alert increment. Boy, did I really have that error this entire time? And none of you told me? Oh no, it's too late. You can't go back into the YouTube comments for the old video and point it out. That's just cheating. All right. I think hopefully now we'll get into a situation where it alerts me. I sort of wonder if maybe this is not actually hitting the greater than or equal to. I wonder. So if instead of 0.001, it was 0.9, something like that, would that work? Should we find out? I don't know. This is probably not very interesting watching me flail around with floating points. That was probably it. So yay, floating points, always a little weird. All right, so it seems to be alerting me about all the right things. It seems to be freaking out about all the right things. And it's giving me sort of nice little calculations on my projected spend by the end of the month, which is nice. So again, obviously ways that this function could be improved. But you know what? I think, in terms of having a baseline for the types of functions that you could write that would alert you when things look strange, and, to have those alerts be a little more dramatic if things look, definitely out of line. I think you kind of get the idea of the sort of things we could be doing here. So with that, this is probably a good stopping point. There's a few little bits of refactoring I want to do. May will handle that in the next section. And then I'm going to go ahead and see if we can add on that kill switch that we've been talking about. So stay tuned for that. I will see you in another episode of Firebase Semi-Live. Thanks, everybody.